So I'm changing up the format on how I'm making this video. This is a jank deck. Everything I got here in DC, I started with zero cards, period. Everything here is some pulls and some singles that I got from a local game store. Joda is my commander simply because I needed access to all the colors. Alright, so let's get started. Joda is my commander. If anything, Muldrotha is my general, because I have a subsection of recursion from the graveyard. Reanimation. Each one of these cards has a specific type of reanimation, and some of them work together to bring each other back. For example, Tashar can help me bring back Lurrus of the Dream Den, and Alesha, who smiles at death, can bring back Tashar. And at the same time, Luminous Broodmoth can bring back Lurrus of the Dream Den, or Necropanther, which in turn can bring back Lurrus of the Dream Den. You see where this is going. You see how this is all going. Alright, and this one, I know it's a big mana sink, but for cards that don't immediately get brought back by these combos, a combination of cards, it really does help. Luminous Broodmoth, just for some quick straight back into play action, and Obsessive Stitcher, because you know what, she actually has two capabilities. For drawing and discarding, some looting going on in case I have something in my hand that I want to get to the graveyard and to cycle through the deck, and an activated ability that lets me bring back pretty much any creature. The next branch on this tree is an Alt Wincon, Simic Ascendancy. I mean, if I had nothing else, it's still an Alt Wincon because it can actually put +1/+1 counters and get those growth counters on itself, but I have a couple other things that help out. Pride Malkin, I hope I'm saying that right. It puts a +1/+1 counter and gives each creature with a +1/+1 counter on it trample. That can be nifty. Alright, and Glowstone Recluse. Every time it mutates, it gets two +1/+1 counters. Dragon Broodmother actually serves two purposes. It gets +1/+1 counters and gives me tokens that can sacrifice to help me out with getting creatures in the graveyard so that I can play them again. Over here, it gives me a token and +1/+1 counters, and even draws me a couple cards, and when it leaves, it basically gives me one more treasure token, although it calls it a gold token. Alright, Citadel Siege, it can do two things, but I'm predominantly using it for the cons of adding +2/+2 counters on target creature, which can in turn make my Joda help one-shot kill at some point in the game. Now, this one, the final one, is what puts +1/+1 counters on each creature, so depending on the timing, this is going to get a lot of growth counters on it. But the first two help me with mana fixing and ramping, so if I get it on early to mid-game, it speeds up my deck. Then, over here, Shaman of the Great Hunt. It gives me card draw as well as make the creatures that get through stronger. Now, moving down this branch of the tree, these are all cards that help me draw in one form or another. Some of them are in subsections, and some of them just have draw capabilities. Like, for example, Ugin the Spirit Dragon. Yes, I pulled it here. Its ultimate ability is what allows me to draw cards, which, since it won't focus, I'm just going to read. I gain 7 life, draw 7 cards, and put up to 7 permanent cards from my hand onto the battlefield. That's a big boost, and it has other capabilities to help it last until it gets there. It gets rid of permanents and deals damage, so it lightning bolts every single one of my turns. This draws me cards for each creature and gives me life for some of the stronger creatures. Mutating draws me cards with this one. And if there's like a board wipe, then I can replenish my hand pretty drastically with this card, especially since it has flash. Teferi, Master of Time, another one I pulled. It has a looting ability. And just in case, I can phase out something that I really need to get rid of. And if I can actually get it to ultimate, which I don't really think so, but hey, here's hoping, I can take 2 extra turns, and that should get me back in the game if I'm behind. Alright, I know companions are not really that great, but this ability I like. It comes into play, and I draw a card for each permanent with a convert mana cost of 3 or greater. That's a good chunk of this deck. This one, Elder Gargaroth. I'm pretty much using it just for the draw ability, but it's modal, so I can create tokens and gain life. Always a good thing. This one helps me ramp, but since there's a good amount of creatures dying and recurring, it'll give me ramp and card draw pretty easily. Over here, these two work in a similar fashion for this deck. I mean, they don't do the exact same thing. This one alternates between giving me mana and drawing me cards, and this one adds a +1/+1 counter on a creature until I have the strongest, then I draw a card. Since I'm using it, or I put it in here predominantly for the drawing card ability, I didn't put it in with the +1/+1 counter alt win con. Over here, Bounder's Enclave, draw a card. I have plenty of creatures that are 4 or greater, or can be 4 or greater real easily. So when my hand's depleted, I can replenish it little by little. And mentioning those power 4 or greater cards, this will help out a lot. It gives all my creatures trample. If I play it and I had a creature with power 4 or greater, I can replace it, play it, draw a card. Don't lose any number of cards from my hand. And then this is just the subsection of cycling cards that I have. Honestly, this one right here I can use for the cycling ability, and if I get Muldrotha out, I can put it back into play and get some pretty big 8/8 beaters. These cycle, and I can recur them back to the field after they cycle. This one gives lifelink and death touch, and this one gives flying. Now, branching off from Muldrotha to help with the engine are some cards that help me sacrifice and give me some sort of extra boost in one form or another. So over here, I have to sacrifice 2 other creatures, but it also forces any number of players that I choose to sacrifice and lose life. And hell, I can even choose myself, so I can sacrifice a 3rd creature if I need it. Depending on where I am in the game, it might be beneficial. But it gives me a couple of mana and draws me a card. Gain a life, each opponent loses a life. I sacrifice a creature, but when it comes into play, each of my opponents sacrifice a creature, and bringing it back from the graveyard over and over again means that I'm not actually casting it, so I no longer have to sacrifice it. Over here, this one gives me a little bit of an aristocrat's effect for black creatures, and I got a good number of creatures that have black in them. And it allows me to sacrifice to draw a card. Now, this one are for moments when I'm going to lose big creatures anyways. I can sacrifice them, gain a ton of life, and draw a card. Now, this is definitely the poor man's carpet of flowers. It does it in relation to shrines instead of islands. But it can help me mana fix at the beginning. And we got some mana rocks. Between them, my main or dominant colors, which are black, green, and blue, get 2 instances from each one of them that allows me to tap them in case I need double mana. And I can get one of the others out of it too. So I got one that produces red and one that produces white. Then there's the Gilded Lotus. Add 3 mana of any one color, and not many of my cards require that much mana intensivity, but just in case. All right, then going back over here, an offshoot of mana fixing and ramping via mana rocks, I just straight out ramp lands, basic lands all throughout. The mutating, essentially a mutating rampant growth. And this doesn't really ramp me per se, but it fits well with these cards, especially when I need the mana to activate certain abilities, for example. Now here's the mana base. Since I don't need white or red that much, they're the fewest of the basic lands. And I have 4 swamps, 4 islands, and I think 7 forests. Now, as for mana fixing or dual producing lands, here's my selection. Some of them are the scrying lands and some of them are the life gain lands. And I got really lucky. I pulled some of these tri-lands. Look at those full art ones. I love them. And of course, just because this LGS had a promotion when you buy certain products, they gave you this promotional version of Reliquary Tower. That's in there too. Just in case I need some mana fixing. And this one also for mana fixing so I can pull the right basic land. So this is a completely different section, which is why it's not attached to the main tree over there. Let's go each level one at a time. This is just a selection of cards that do stuff from exiling creatures and permanents to just straight out destroying. This one's my favorite, Plague Wind. It's an oldie but a goodie. And in case I don't have enough mana, but I have the right colors, I can still cast it for 5 if I have one of each thanks to Joda. And this is the remainder of the Mutate package. This one boosts my other creatures. This one allows me to destroy artifacts and enchantments of my opponents. I get tokens out of this one. And this is a way I can destroy directly creatures or planeswalkers that my opponents control. Now, over here is a combination of recursion targets, reanimation for different reasons. This one is just so that I can use it for fodder and get a firebolt and life gain action going with each of these cards. This one is to destroy target non-creature permanents, and I can do it to anyone, mine or theirs. And over here is a subsection of targets that also do some sort of aristocrat type of action. So this one over here might be a finisher if I get to a large army. I mean, seriously. If I give all my creatures lifelink and they get pretty big from all those +1/+1 counters, maybe I can one-shot the table with any luck. Alright, a little bit of drain and gain. Because it's a shrine, it also helps out that poor man's carpet of flowers. And Massacre Worm, yes, another pull. I got super lucky out here. I think the East Coast actually gets all the good cards. Or rather, the good groupings of cards for easy pulls. This one gives 1 token and aristocrat type of effect. So this all works together. And just over here by herself, we have Vivian. It allows me to look at the top card of my library, which is a big help, especially if I'm trying to plan ahead. And just in case, to help me thin out, it's a pseudo draw card. If the top is a creature, I can just play it right away. And it also gives me creature tokens. 3/3 creature tokens that can do reach, vigilance, or trample by themselves. Now, that's this jank deck. I'm working with what I got, which I got really lucky, so it's at least somewhat viable in a casual format. It's very interactive, and I hope it actually works out for me. Well, in the end, I don't have a name for this deck except just pure jank. Hope you enjoyed.